Pope Leo XIV is cleaning house 6 cardinals face removal. Beneath the grand dome of the Vatican, where prayers have echoed through centuries, a silent political and religious earthquake is beginning to form. Pope Leo XIV, once praised as a symbol of compassion and wisdom, has suddenly become the central figure in a shocking internal purge that is shaking the foundations of the Church. 6 cardinals, the most powerful figures after the Holy Father, are now facing the possibility of being completely removed from the sacred halls of power. Who are they? And what could have driven Leo XIV, a pope known for his gentleness, to launch such a ruthless house cleaning? Was a conspiracy exposed, a betrayal lurking in the shadows, or is this the final move in a calculated effort to consolidate power amid deepening fractures within the Curia? Prepare to enter a maze of secrets never before revealed, where faith, ambition, and treachery are tearing the Vatican apart from within. So who exactly is Pope Leo XIV? If you're like most people, you probably hadn't heard of him before he became Pope. That was exactly his strategy. This guy's a chess master. While everyone else was playing checkers, he was thinking 10 moves ahead. His background isn't in crowd-pleasing or giving inspiring speeches. It's in theology, strategy, and getting things done behind the scenes, where Pope Francis was all about mercy, inclusion, and reaching out to people on the margins. Leo is about structure, clarity, and building something that lasts. Francis wanted a church that smells like the sheep, getting down in the dirt with regular people. Leo wants a church that stands like a fortress, unshakable, organized, and speaking with one clear voice. Don't get me wrong, this isn't about Leo being cold or heartless. It's about him having a completely different vision for what the Catholic Church needs to be in the 21st century. Francis saw a world that needed compassion. Leo sees a world that needs direction. To understand why this matters so much, you need to understand how power actually works in the Vatican. It's not like a normal government where everything happens out in the open. Cardinals aren't just ceremonial figures in fancy red hats. These guys run what are basically Vatican ministries. They control doctrine. They shape what gets taught in Catholic schools. They influence international diplomacy. Some of them are household names, giving interviews and making headlines. Others work completely in the shadows, making decisions that affect millions of people without anyone even knowing their names. And here's the thing. Under Pope Francis, these cardinals became incredibly powerful. Francis trusted them, gave them autonomy, let them shape policy. They became the architects of his vision for a more merciful, inclusive church. But Leo has a different vision. That means Francis's guys have got to go. Let's talk about who's actually in the crosshairs here. These aren't just random personnel changes. Each one sends a message about where Leo wants to take the church. First up is Cardinal Mauro Gambetti. This guy is the archpriest of St. Peter's Basilica. Basically, he's in charge of the most famous church in the world. Gambetti is a Franciscan friar, which means he's all about humility and simplicity. Under Pope Francis, that was perfect. The Basilica became a welcoming place where anyone could come and feel at home. But Leo sees this differently. To him, St. Peter's isn't just a welcoming space. It's a symbol of the church's power and authority. Gambetti's gentle, humble approach might work for a small parish, but Leo wants someone who understands that St. Peter's is a statement to the world. Word is Gambetti is getting quietly reassigned, maybe to some distant diocese where his pastoral style will be appreciated, but where he won't be front and center representing the Vatican to millions of pilgrims every year. Then there's Cardinal Marcello Semeraro. You might not have heard of this guy, but his job is absolutely fascinating. He's the prefect of the dicastery for the causes of saints. In other words, he decides who becomes a saint. Think about that for a second. This one man has enormous influence over who the Catholic Church holds up as examples for the faithful. He's literally shaping the stories that will inspire Catholics for generations. Semeraro is incredibly qualified. He's got the theological knowledge, respects tradition, does his job well. But here's the problem from Leo's perspective. He's boring. In a world where everything is about social media, viral stories, and capturing people's attention, Semeraro operates like it's still 1950. Leo wants saints who trend online. He wants canonizations that make headlines and inspire young people to pay attention to the church. Semeraro's careful, scholarly approach just doesn't cut through the noise of modern media. So Leo is looking for someone who understands that making saints isn't just about theology. It's about storytelling, marketing, and cultural impact. Someone who can turn canonizations into global events that make people excited about Catholicism again. Now we get to Cardinal Farrell, and this is where things get really interesting. Farrell runs the dicastery for laity, family, and life. Basically, he's supposed to be the Vatican's connection to regular Catholic families around the world. But here's the problem. Farrell operates like an old-school bureaucrat. He's top-down, institutional, focused on managing people rather than empowering them. That just doesn't work anymore. Young Catholics don't want to be managed. They want to be heard. Catholic women don't want a figurehead speaking for them, and they want an actual voice in church decisions. Families dealing with real-world problems don't want rigid rules. They want guidance that actually helps their lives. Leo gets this. His vision for the church involves actually empowering lay people, giving them real authority, not just the illusion of participation. That means Farrell's bureaucratic style has got to go. Plus, Farrell has this other title. He's the Camerlengo, which means he's supposed to run the church between popes. That ties him to the old institutional structure that Leo wants to completely overhaul. Cardinal Arthur Roche might be facing the most complex situation of all. He's in charge of liturgy, basically how Catholics worship and what their church services look like. This is where things get really complicated. Under Pope Francis, Roche had to enforce some really controversial rules about the traditional Latin Mass. There's a whole community of Catholics who prefer the old-style service, and Francis wanted to limit it to promote unity. Roche was the guy who had to make that happen. He made enemies on both sides. Traditional Catholics hate him for restricting their preferred form of worship. Progressive Catholics think he was too heavy-handed and created unnecessary division. Leo is looking at this situation and thinking this guy created problems instead of solving them. Leo wants unity too, but he wants someone who can build bridges instead of burning them. Someone who can respect different traditions while keeping the church together. If Roche gets replaced, it'll signal that Leo wants cooperation over conflict, diplomacy over enforcement. The new person will probably try to heal the liturgical divisions instead of making them worse. But the biggest target of all might be Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez. This guy is the prefect of the dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. Basically, he's in charge of what the Catholic Church officially teaches about everything. Fernandez was Pope Francis's right-hand man on theology. He helped write some of Francis's most important documents, pushing for a more flexible, pastoral approach to church teaching. His philosophy was basically that life is complicated, and church teaching should acknowledge that complexity. Traditional Catholics absolutely hate him. They think he's undermining clear church doctrine, blurring lines that should be crystal clear. Progressive Catholics love him because he brings nuance and compassion to difficult situations. But Leo wants clarity above all else. He doesn't want theology that requires a PhD to understand. He wants teaching that's clear, definitive, and unshakable. Fernandez's nuanced approach, while intellectually sophisticated, creates confusion for regular Catholics trying to understand what their church actually believes. Removing Fernandez would be the most dramatic move of all. It would signal a complete shift away from Francis's theological legacy and towards something much more black and white. Finally, there's Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State. This is basically the Pope's chief diplomat, the guy who handles the Vatican's relationships with every government in the world. Parolin has been incredibly successful at this job. He's maintained diplomatic relations with China, navigated tensions with Russia, and kept the Vatican relevant in international affairs. His approach has been careful, nuanced, and pragmatic. But Leo might see this as being too passive. In a world full of moral crises, Leo wants a church that takes clear stands, not one that tries to stay neutral and keep everyone happy. If Perlin goes, it would signal a major shift in how the Vatican engages with world politics. Instead of careful diplomacy, we might see more moral assertiveness, the Vatican calling out injustice even when it's politically inconvenient. So who's going to replace all these people? That's where Leo's real vision becomes clear. The rumors suggest he's looking for a completely different type of leader. Instead of old Vatican insiders, he wants fresh faces from around the world. Instead of bureaucrats, he wants builders and innovators. Instead of careful diplomats, he wants people willing to take risks for their beliefs. There's talk of elevating more women to positions of real authority, not just symbolic roles, but actual decision-making power. There's speculation about bringing in younger leaders who understand social media and modern communication. There's buzz about choosing more cardinals from Africa, Asia, and Latin America, regions where the Catholic Church is actually growing. This isn't just about changing personnel. It's about fundamentally reimagining what Vatican leadership looks like in the 21st century. Now, you might be thinking, this is interesting Vatican politics, but why should I care? Here's why this matters for everyone, not just Catholics. The Catholic Church is one of the most influential institutions in the world. It runs schools, hospitals, and charities on every continent. It influences political decisions, social movements, and cultural trends. When the Vatican speaks, world leaders listen. These personnel changes will determine what kind of voice the Catholic Church has in global affairs. Will it be a voice of careful diplomacy or moral assertiveness? Will it focus on traditional values or progressive inclusion? Will it speak primarily to Western audiences or embrace its growing global diversity? The answers to these questions will affect everything from international diplomacy to local parish life. They'll influence what gets taught in Catholic universities, what positions the Church takes on social issues, and how it responds to global crises. But Leo's revolution isn't going to happen without resistance. These cardinals he's targeting didn't get to their positions by being pushovers. They have their own networks, their own supporters, their own sources of influence. Cardinal Fernandez, for example, has strong support among progressive bishops around the world. If Leo tries to remove him, it could create a backlash that damages church unity. Cardinal Parolin has relationships with governments everywhere. Removing him could hurt the Vatican's diplomatic effectiveness. And then there are the regional differences. The church in Africa might want different things than the church in Europe. American Catholics might have different priorities than Asian Catholics. Leo's vision of unity and clarity might actually create more division if it's not handled carefully. The next few months are going to be crucial. How Leo manages these transitions will determine whether his revolution succeeds or backfires spectacularly. What makes this so fascinating is that we're watching history happen in real time. The Catholic Church has survived for 2,000 years by adapting to changing circumstances while maintaining its core identity. But it's rarely faced changes as rapid and dramatic as what's happening now. Francis represented one vision of adaptation opening up, reaching out, embracing complexity and mercy. Leo represents a different vision, standing firm, speaking clearly, building strong foundations. Both approaches have their merits, and both have their risks. Francis's approach inspired many people, but also created confusion and controversy. Leo's approach might provide clarity and stability, but could also alienate people who felt welcomed by Francis's more inclusive message. So what should we expect in the coming months? Based on what insiders are saying, these changes are going to happen gradually and quietly. Leo isn't going to make big announcements or create dramatic confrontations. He's going to use respectful language, talk about new opportunities and different roles, and make it all sound like natural transitions. But make no mistake, the cumulative effect is going to be revolutionary. By the end of next year, the Vatican leadership could look completely different than it did under Francis. There's also talk of a major encyclical, basically a papal letter that outlines Leo's vision for the Church. This could provide the theological framework for all these personnel changes, explaining why they're necessary and what they're meant to achieve. And then there's the upcoming Synod on Synodality. It's a major meeting about how the Church makes decisions. Sources suggest this could involve some radical proposals about involving lay people, especially women, in church governance. Here's what's really at stake: the future identity of the Catholic Church. Is it going to be an institution that adapts to modern culture, or one that stands apart from it? Is it going to be centralized and hierarchical, or more democratic and participatory? Is it going to emphasize mercy and inclusion, or clarity and tradition? Leo's personnel changes suggest he's chosen his path. He wants a church that's strong, clear, and uncompromising. He wants leadership that can articulate a compelling vision for the future without apologizing for traditional beliefs. Whether this vision succeeds will depend on how well he executes these transitions and whether he can maintain unity while implementing dramatic changes. The Vatican has been remarkably quiet about all of this. No official announcements, no press releases, just whispers and speculation. But the moves are happening, and they're going to reshape one of the world's most influential institutions. This is just the beginning of what could be the most significant transformation of the Catholic Church in generations. The silent purge inside the Vatican under Pope Leo XIV is not just a religious upheaval, but a powerful warning about the fragility of power even in the holiest of places. 6 cardinals now face the risk of being removed not only because of specific wrongdoings, but perhaps also due to long-standing tensions between tradition and reform, between loyalty and personal ambition. From this event, we learn a crucial lesson: trust cannot be maintained through fear, and religious faith cannot be twisted by political calculations. An institution, no matter how sacred, will gradually lose its soul if it lacks transparency and the courage to face the truth. Now is the time for those who believe in faith and justice to speak out. No one is too small to make a difference. Let us face the truth, uphold the core values of belief, and reignite the light of hope in the shadows of power that threaten to consume the faith of humanity.